for Black folks to really change our outcome, we have to be very strategic about how we spend our dollars and sacrificing our convenience as a result.
Are you ready? Okay. I was trying to get you to sing along with me. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Town Hall. A Black.
Tell me, are you ready?
Yes, I'm
No,
ready.
do you see me? I was singing, tell me, have you seen her?
Yeah.
I was singing, have you seen her? Tell me, have you seen her?
Anyway, hey, y'all. Welcome to Town Hall, a Black queer podcast. The podcast where we journey through a time and a theme by sharing stories, music, poetry, and art of varying depth and hilarity. Today's episode is on getting them coins, getting them money, getting that ice. You and me, honey. I don't know what that was about. Black wealth.
Yeah. Not ice.
Bob, what is the true definition of wealth for you?
I think wealth, there's the esoteric. It's like wealthy in what? Love.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, no, I'm talking about wealthy in currency. I'm talking about wealth in tradable coins, in commerce, e-commerce. And I think there's a level of I think there's a level of money where it becomes something that people would call wealth. So I think that people like Oprah Winfrey, she has wealth.
She does.
You know what I mean? And by the way, this is not an official definition. You know what I mean? This is how I think about it. When I think of a wealthy person. I think of a person who is in a very, very small percentage. Your income puts you like somewhere in like the top 10, maybe the top 5%. Those folks are wealthy. There are people who are like a little rich, people who are well off,
rich, and then there's wealthy,
people who are comfortable. Yeah, I would say there's like impoverished. This is my own scale: impoverished, broke, comfortable, well off,
wilding out,
rich, wealthy, and then the 1%.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. I don't know nothing about half them things. But I will say that I think wealth is sort of the level at which you get to when your money, hopefully the abundance of money, will continue to generate money, and it's sort of self-perpetuating. It just kind of your businesses are making businesses that are making money, that your money's making money. Passive income. As opposed to just having to go and perform work. And then you go from being a worker to being rich, like you said, and then your wealth, is when you probably can retire and still your money will continue to grow.
Fully retired, like our
fully retired. Now I'm not
like
just
Glenn
retired,
Hill,
darling.
fully retired.
I'm fully functional retiring.
Retired. And I think that wealth, there's like a I think that the people, the power, the people that be, the citizens, we the people, are becoming very sick of wealth. And they're not viewing wealthy people the way they used to view wealthy people. There is not an appreciation, and I don't know if you saw this or not. Speaking of Black wealth, there are two very wealthy Black people who are currently under a lot of fire.
Oh, I seen it. I was just about to, because of Hawaii.
No, because of what's going on in Maui. Oprah Winfrey, who is notably probably the most wealthy Black woman in America, I think it's. And The Rock, who is not as wealthy as Oprah Winfrey, but The Rock has a lot of.
Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
Yeah. Our the pit stop, The Rock. They went online and they were asking their followers to give money for Maui, and it did not
go well. You know what my sort of thought about it is, you know, I don't,
What is it?
I didn't watch, I didn't really take in not this Heidi hairstyle. My name is Heidi. Um, but like
Uns ja, welcoming to Black Queer Town Hall. Uns ja.
Town Hall, yeah. Okay, I don't really know. That's
Willkommen.
culturally insensitive. Anyway, whatever. The point is, I think much like an effort and the initiative in the mid '80s, when climate change, formerly known as global warming, was became a thing that
Formerly known as El Nino.
formerly known as it's snowing again. Um,
Do you remember El Nino? What age?
I
Wild.
remember El
El
Nino.
Nino was such a weird.
That was the
It was
first
like a.
time
It was back
national
in El Nino.
the national attention was drawn, national panic was drawn to a weather event that we felt like, regardless of wherever you were going to get impacted by El Nino.
Yeah, and it became a catch-all term. It basically became a catch-all term for climate change or any weird weather or any amount of rain that felt like too much rain or snow when there shouldn't be snow or cold when it shouldn't be cold or hot
Mhm.
in the middle of December. It all just
El
became
Nino.
El Nino.
The the push in the 80s and 90s, late 80s, to really commercialize the act of recycling, and the
Oh
connection
yeah.
of recycling to stopping climate change. Like we thought, oh, if I recycle this soda bottle, then the then there'll be no more climate change, and
We'll buy the
yeah,
earth another
exactly.
10,000
And I think
years.
that effort was like recycle as much as you can. The more you recycle, the less climate change will affect us. I think that was the notion, and that was obviously put forth from the plastics industry and a lot of the bottling companies, Coca-Cola, soft drink companies that were moving into plastics because they were going from glass bottles to plastic bottles and going into plastics and realizing. I mean, you know, this is me here realizing, this is my opinion, that like recycling is good. People should recycle. Recycling in terms of practicing not being wasteful is important, but the capitalism of it all really is these major companies and corporations realizing that if we can convince the people who whether they bought the product from us or not to give us back the plastic, we can actually reuse that plastic, and that'll cut down our costs. But we're still going to be, the black smoke is still going up into the air from the companies and from the factories, right? And
Mm.
so really, I can't say that I'm not here to say that recycling has no impact on climate change, but I think that the impact on the individual companies and corporations is greater than the positive impact on climate change. That's my opinion. I do think that if we can get the corporations to be better citizens and behave in a way and produce their products in a way that's less damaging to the environment, that is going to have a bigger effect than the companies just keep doing what they're doing and then we
No, for
go in and
sure.
do our things. But that my point was, I'm sorry, I know
For
that was a
sure.
long point. My point was that I feel like it's that same thing with regards to wealth. And you know, like really the 1% are in a completely different ball game. What they're telling us, you go out and work as hard as you can work 90 hours, work 1,000 hours, find a way to work 1,000 hours a week, and you might have what we have. But what they're not telling us is you working that 1,000 hours a week is what is keeping them in that position. You know, that's sorry. I know that was like a
Well, I think that the idea that we can join the 1%
just by working hard.
is what is, I mean, obviously the statistics don't work that way. Everyone can't join the 1%. It won't be 1% anymore.
Right.
But the goal is to redistribute the wealth from the 1% or have them pay their fair share of living in America. You know, I can't speak for every country in the world. I don't know how every single country works,
Mm-hmm.
but I can say this: you cannot live in America for free. Even if you aren't paying, someone's paying. Like if children don't pay taxes, but your parents will pay taxes on the fact that they have children. Like no one lives in America for free. You have to literally pay rent to live in this country, or you have to evade the rent
Oh,
somehow. You know what I mean? And if you don't pay the rent, the government's gonna get you. They're gonna put you in jail and say you didn't give us our tax money. You evaded taxes. If you make money, you give money. Anyone who makes a dollar in this country, you owe me some of it, unless you're a church. If you're a religious institution, you don't owe us any money. We're gonna let you guys keep the billions of dollars that you all make that could really go to help a lot of us here in these United States of America. And
Nothing going on but
and
the rent.
I think a big part of the wealth is that the really wealthy is they try to sell you the notion
Mm,
that you could be just like them if you just work hard enough. And I think we know now, well, not all of us, but a lot of us are
true.
realizing now, we're waking up woke and realizing that becoming extremely wealthy is not necessarily about working hard. That's not what makes you incredibly wealthy. There are instances where more physical labor can make you more money, but I don't think that more physical labor or harder work or longer hours will inherently
No, it's not.
make you
It's it's
wealthy.
it's it's one step closer to disproportionate because the conversation and that messaging is like just work harder, do more work, which ultimately results in people just working longer hours, working harder, working longer hours, being more dedicated to the job that they're already doing. Like basically they're saying keep doing the same thing, just do more of it without acknowledging that you need access to more capital, more income. You should have your own businesses. It's the goal is to work less and have that work be more valuable so that you can earn more money. But that's not what they're talking about. They're saying go stay at work. As a matter of fact, spend the night at that job, keep working, and we're not gonna give you a raise. Just be more passionate. And if you're more passionate about what you're doing, then maybe you'll be like me. But that's obviously not really what happens in capitalism. That's why capitalism is not sustainable, because essentially I think the end of capitalism is the beginning of capitalism, where we have a few people who are owning and telling everybody else what to do, and we have all these other people working and performing this work, producing these products for no money. Like the goal of capitalism is to have the worker working for little to no money, just enough to stay alive, and that they're only focused on working that job. They're not worried about any other thing in the world. They're just drones to work. I think that's the goal of capitalism, because corporations, which are a big part of American capitalism, obviously, is the goal of the corporate. I remember when I incorporated for the first time, and after watching Michael Moore's documentary, I can't remember which one it was. That definition of corporation and the goal of corporation is actually to earn more money every single year, year after year, earn more money than they did the last year with less expenses, meaning pay your people less, but make them do more work so that you can earn more money. That's like how capitalism works.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of wild, and it's gonna have someone's gonna have to be trapped in the system in order for it to. It is such a fucked up, like
It's
backwards
doomed. It's doomed.
system, but
It's doomed.
but 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 you have to convince people that they can make it. That's a part of the thing. You have to feel like you can be one of those people, and then when you feel like that, then you're like, oh, I'll fight to uphold this because I believe I could be this. I could be one of the elite if I just wiggle my way hard enough. But I think we're realizing now that's not necessarily true. And I'm excited to have all of these lovely people talk to us about
Me
it today.
too. Let's get started.
So let's listen to our first story. Brian Thompson is both a tax attorney and a certified financial planner. His company, Brian Thompson Financial, provides comprehensive financial planning to LGBTQ entrepreneurs who run mission-driven businesses. And of course, Brian's podcast, the Mission Driven Business Podcast, focuses on principles needed to create mission-driven businesses and can be heard wherever you listen to your podcast. So let's listen to Brian Thompson.
Hi, my name is Brian Thompson. I own Brian Thompson Financial. It's a financial planning firm for LGBTQ entrepreneurs who run mission-driven businesses. And we focus on making sure that those businesses are profitable and also impactful. So I teach my clients different ways to do that. We talk a lot about mission, vision, and values of the business to make sure that they have a good focus of what they want to do and what they want to accomplish with their business and their legacy. And then also the practical steps around bookkeeping, taxes, cash flow, all the practical things that you need to do to run a business. and then also put systems and processes in place to help them focus on what they do best. I spent 10 years as a tax attorney working for representing businesses and individuals against the IRS. And I liked that work. I thought it was fun and interesting, but everybody always came to me in trouble. And so that got stressful and after a certain amount of time. And so I wanted to be more proactive than reactive. And during that time, marriage equality was coming to pass. And so I knew that I wanted to do something myself to help my community really try their best to succeed with all these new marriage laws and benefits coming to pass. And so I started blogging, and the partners at my firm ended up splitting, and one asked me to come with him. He said, "Hey, you can come with me. You'll be a partner in 8 years, and we can build this thing together." And I was like, "Well, I've already been working for you for 10 years, and I don't know why I would wait another 8 years to become a partner when I can just do this myself." And around that time, I came across an organization that helped people build their own financial planning firm. It's like, oh, right, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to be. And that helped me start my own firm. And I started out serving the LGBTQ community just in general. And I realized that that was just too large of a community. I needed to have a much more defined niche. And because of my attorney background and the representing businesses before the IRS, business owners just kept coming to me. And I learned in the process of refining my niche, looking at my own mission, vision, and values around the business, that this is what I wanted to specialize in, and haven't looked back since. So in college, my senior year of college, my dad died, and he left my mom a good amount of money. And she got a financial advisor that really, I use financial advisor in quotation marks because he ended up really just putting her money in commission-based annuities, which gave him a lot of money and tied up her money in ways that she didn't need or couldn't use. And so she needed help. My dad was the one that was responsible for all the financials of the household. And when he died, she didn't know what to do. And I think a part of my mindset is I'm a very fixed, manage, and control person. And so I wanted to help and take control and see if other ways that I could help her not feel as overwhelmed and figure out what she needed to do now that she was stuck in a certain situation. And so from there, I just really fell in love with financial planning. I learned about the tricks of financial planning and how it works and how money works. And also at the time I was in law school, so I was accruing $166,000 of student loans. So I really needed to get on my own financial planning to make sure that I wasn't suffering when I got out of law school. And I fell in love my second year of law school. I can still remember the moment when I just fell in love with tax. I took a tax class and it really just came to me. And I fell in love with the concept and the rules and the exceptions to the exceptions. I fell in love so much with it. I thought at one point I was going to stop going to law school and become an accountant. And one of my advisors was like, no, you can actually do tax as a lawyer. And so that's how I got into tax law, and still had this interest in financial planning on the side. I became a certified financial planner just because I thought it'd be fun and exciting. And I figure I may use it someday. And then that moment when the firm was splitting and I decided to go out on my own, that's when it came into practice. So it's always been there for me. It's always been something that I love. And I'm sure a part of that is still my control about trying to do the best that I can with the things that I have. But it's gotten me to where I want to be, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm one of two. I'm the youngest, and my brother isn't as money focused or money minded as me. So it sort of fell to me. And plus, I was in law school studying tax and those types of things. So that just sort of fell on my shoulders. But we grew up in a financially wealthy household. My dad was a GM executive. And, it's funny because we think he died because of all the stress that was associated with his life. He grew up very poor. His family was sharecroppers in Tennessee. He's one of 9 children. So they grew up very poor. He actually picked cotton, which is something that he would often remind us of. Like our lives were very easy compared to his. But he is very driven, very successful. Executive, got us a lot of things and presented us with a lot of opportunities, which I'm still thankful for today. We didn't have the best relationship because he was working a lot. And I think me being gay, they sort of knew that. And I was different from my brother, who was a football star and homecoming king and all that. But I still I still feel very lucky and feel privileged in the way that I grew up, that having money makes a big difference. Even if I'm Black, right? Having money makes a difference in how I made my way through the world and the opportunities that I had in the world that I wouldn't have had otherwise. We are a very driven family, and uh, I can still, even though I haven't known my dad since I was 20, I can still sense myself in him, his attributes and his accomplishments, and he just worked his way up. And which I get why he worked all the time. I get why he was stressed all the time. I get why he was somewhat frustrated and angry all the time. I can't imagine being an executive in a big corporation in the 80s, being one of few Black people in your position, and then getting promotions and I remember he got one promotion and one of his coworkers quit because he thought he was given to it because he was Black. Right. And I'm thinking, no, it's probably because he's good at his job. I feel like in those moments, I realized that, we had the talk. You are going to have to be twice as good as the people just to get half as much as the recognition. And I think a part of the way that I grew up too led me to be a perfectionist, because I knew that I had to be twice as good. And I needed to prove to people that I was worthy of the things that I was getting or the attention that I was getting. And obviously, that's not super healthy, but it got me a long way. Right. Eventually, I learned that I don't need to be perfect, and I could put those things aside. But we were the Black family that people looked at, and I felt like we were representing a group of people where other white people didn't have that pressure. And so I wanted to do my best, and I'm sure he wanted to do his best to be perfect. So he strove and really worked hard to succeed. And sometimes that was the detriment to his family and his health. I imagine he was a very high achieving person that still had discriminated against and still had bias and still missed opportunities because he was Black. And I think it's also important to distinguish between the income gap, right, being paid at a certain amount, and the wealth gap, having assets and liabilities that are more than or that are different between white people and Black people. Because to me, income gap exists, obviously, but the wealth gap is even bigger. And the fact that, to me, your net worth, the amount of wealth that you have, is actually a better indicator of your financial stability than income is, because we all know a lot of people that spend a lot of money and make a lot of money. It's really the ability to sustain your life if you lost your income. And so he did a good job of really building wealth, which is why even he died early, we are still living off of that wealth because he did a good job building it. Despite the hurdles and gaps that he had in income and raises and promotions, he was an amazing person. I wish I knew him today. I wish I could talk to him about my career. I imagine he would be proud of me at this point, and we would probably have a different relationship. And I would love to get his experience of what it was like to grow up in that situation where you're trying to build wealth during a time where Black people are still overlooked and thought of as just athletes, and being able to really succeed in that way. He was an amazing man. So assets are things that you own that have value. So most people think of their assets as a house, right? Now that's most people's biggest assets. Or you could have an investment account, a 401k, an IRA. Those are retirement savings vehicles, or just money in your bank account, right? That's also an asset. Your bank account is an asset. Liabilities are things that you owe. So assets are things that you own, and liabilities are things that you owe. And so your mortgage, your credit cards, any loans that you've taken out, all of those are liabilities. And your net worth is your assets minus your liabilities. And that equals your total net worth. And the goal for everyone is to have that number be in the positive rather than the negative. So your assets outweigh your liabilities. So you have a positive net worth. So Black families owned 24 cents for every dollar of white family wealth. So white families have $100,000 of net worth, and Black people have $24,000 of net worth. Hispanic families are 23 cents of every dollar. The average wealth for white families was $1,268,000. The average net worth for Blacks was $308,000, and for Hispanics, it was $298,000. The other interesting statistic that I found was the share of household numbers versus share of U.S. wealth. So white people account for almost 64% of households in the United States, but accounted for 82.3% of wealth, versus Black people that accounted for 14% of households in the U.S., but only accounted for 4% of wealth. And Hispanics 10% and versus 3%. So obviously the gap is huge. And luckily we do have net worth, but taking the average, I was trying to find statistics on the mean. So the average is just everybody, right? Including LeBron and everybody else who's wealthy, versus the mean, which is that middle number. I imagine that's even lower than the numbers that we're seeing right now. The dynamic of intersectionality plays into everything, especially with those in the LGBTQ community. And it looks like, especially when talking about at least income, the LGBTQ white people, white and LGBT, still earn 97 cents on a dollar for non-LGBT people, versus Black people were earning 80 cents on every dollar. LGBTQ and Black were earning 80 cents on every dollar. The Latinx community was earning 90 cents on every dollar. Gender inequality, right? White men in the LGBTQ community were earning 96 cents on every dollar, where white women were earning 87 cents. Non-binary, genderqueer, gender fluid people were earning 70 cents on every dollar. Black LGBTQ women were earning 85 cents on every dollar. So the intersectionality also plays into the dynamic and the gap that we're experiencing, which is why I think it's so important for people to understand that it's not just a race thing, it's not just a gender thing, it's all of those things combined, which is why, our Black trans brothers and sisters are suffering so much. And the gap between that and white people is just unimaginable to me. When I was researching this and when I really started getting into it, I found out that the gap between entrepreneurs and Black entrepreneurs and white entrepreneurs is actually 3-to-1, rather than something like 24-to-1. And I was sort of dug into that. I was like, oh, so what is it about entrepreneurship that actually makes Black people more successful? And it's the ability to create our own income, to use our talents and our abilities to really dive into and create something that's beautiful and also profitable. And so that's where the theory of helping these entrepreneurs create mission-driven businesses comes from. It's using your talents to focus on what you do best so you can create a wonderful living for yourself and also have an impact on the world. Because if we're all doing our special talents, the world is better off. And not only that, then we can help close the wealth gap if the people who are building these businesses are succeeding and thriving. I'm a podcast, mission-driven business podcast, where I talk to mission-driven business owners. And my goal there is to make sure that people can see other people that look like them succeeding. Because if you can see it, you can be it. I have a singular guest every episode, someone who's built the business, someone who's an entrepreneur, and we have different types of entrepreneurs. Some are CEOs, some are founders and have left the business, some are just starting the business. And I do my best to get a wide variety of entrepreneurs on the show to, again, show that no matter who you are, trans, Black, you can build a business and be successful at it. My consulting, usually they come to me with either an established business, something that they've been in for a couple of years and are just getting enough momentum where they're like, all right, I know that I can't just do this by myself anymore. I can't wing it. I need some sort of structure and process. And I think a lot of them come to me lost, right? One of my clients said he wasn't lost in the forest. He didn't even know where the forest was. And so being able to really help navigate and bring people into systems and processes that really help them figure out where they are, where they want to be, and how they get from one place to another is what I focus on. And it's whether you're just starting the business out or whether you've already had established business, right? I feel like I've seen both situations a lot. I do have a political consultant who has a consulting firm and was just lost. He was excited and knew that he could do his thing, but didn't know anything about building a business or how that business would affect his personal finances, and was very fearful around his ability to really build the life that he wanted and also build his business. So we started from the beginning and built it ground up. And we've been working together for, I think, 5 years now. And to see how far he's come, and to see how far he's come, just not only in the business, but his comfort level, his idea of freedom, and his ability to see himself as a business owner and somebody that can create whatever he wants. I say this all the time to my clients, that you can create whatever you want. You just have to be intentional about what that is. And that takes some reflection and intentionality around what you want to build. And to see that come to fruition for him, and to see how grateful he is for it every time that we talk. He's like, I never would have thought I would have gotten here. I never would have thought I would have made this much money. I never would have thought I would have had this much freedom. And that's what I want for my clients. I want everybody to experience what I experienced myself: freedom and opportunity and the ability to live the life that you want. Wealth and money are tools. And to me, they're the tools to live the life that you want. And if you're not living the life that you want, no matter how much money you're making, it doesn't matter, because at some point we were all going to die. And this is also part of my history, coming into the fact that my dad made a lot of money and built a lot of wealth and died when he was 50. Didn't get to experience that. Didn't get to experience seeing his kid go to law school and being able to pay for that, or helping buy a house, right? And there are all these fundamental things that white families have all the time that we rarely get to experience. So to me, another thing that we focus on is creating the life that you want and need now, and creating the life that you want and need in the future, making sure that both of those things are taken care of, because you never know what's going to happen. You never know when things are going to change or when things are going to end. So being able to really live the life that you want now and also take care of the life that you want in the future is what we're trying to balance out when I'm working with my one-on-one clients. My go-to is always focus on what you can control. There are plenty of things outside of our control, including systemic racism and bias, that we really have no control over. We can do our best to fight it, or we can do our best to fight for people that can change that. But in the end, we only have control over what's in front of us, which is also why I think people who are entrepreneurs and business owners have the ability to create the life that they want. And that gives them the most freedom and flexibility around the success that they have and the opportunities that they have. So for that person that says, I can't get a leg up, I say, do my best to focus on those things that you can control. Is there something that you feel like you're talented at? Is there something that you feel like some value you can bring to the world or to society? And seeing if you could build something off of that, right? Because if you're using something that you love to do and you're using it in a way that benefits other people, the money will come. And the barrier to entry around being an entrepreneur and building a business is so low at this point, with the internet and the ability to really create things from nothing, that if you really focus on what you do best and trying to build off of that, you have the best opportunity to thrive. Not saying that you will, not saying that you won't run into barriers, you will. But if you can focus on what you control and using those to the best of your ability, that's a place to start, right? It's really hard to be a person, and I'm speaking just for myself from personal experience, even from somebody who's come from a place where I had opportunities because of my family upbringing and being a male, being a straight, I'm definitely not straight, being a cis male, I still have had opportunities and benefits. And it's still hard getting up as a Black person and seeing all the discrimination, seeing all the death, seeing all the injustice, that sometimes you just need a break. I mentioned at the beginting that I used to write about this a lot, and then I just got burned out, right? Seeing all of these statistics around the racial wealth gap and how it's gotten worse, not gotten better. And part of my value system and my mission of my business is to try to close it. And to see it not working was sometimes disappointing, if not devastating. And so I needed to take a break. I needed to take a break from all this, take care of myself, make sure that I was eating healthily, getting some sleep, focusing on the things that really brought me joy, and then getting back to what I feel like is my drive, my mission. This is why when I talk about building a business, that having that mission, vision, and values is so important, because we do have a tough world and we have a tough road to hoe as people who are marginalized. And sometimes that gets too much, and sometimes we need to take a break. But if you get back to that lens around what you're trying to do, why you're trying to do it, eventually you come back to it and say, all right, so this is worth it. all this hard work, all this disappointment and struggle is still worth it because I'm building a great life for myself and I'm leaving the world a better place. It doesn't feel fair that we have to take care of everybody else when we succeed, where white people don't have to even think about that or do that. Also, I've been given a lot of privilege and opportunity, and why would I hold that to myself? So I personally feel like I have a responsibility to give back, to provide, whether it's through giving actual money or for providing opportunities for other people that don't have these opportunities. I'm on the board of a organization called the Brave Space Alliance here in Chicago that focuses on Black trans people on the city's south and west sides. I'm using my skills and my talents in a way that can help other people thrive. And I feel like that is my responsibility because I've been given opportunities that were not given to me, or that I did not really earn. It was just given, right? Because of the family that I grew up in or the people that I surrounded myself with. So I feel like I have the responsibility to give back, but I would never put that on somebody else. And this is what I found with other Black entrepreneurs that I've worked with, is that they also feel that responsibility. So sometimes it's harder to build wealth. If you are succeeding, you're finally at a point where you succeed, and then you have to take care of your parents and your siblings and your cousins. It doesn't feel fair to me, but it's a part of how the world that we live in, that we know the people that are succeeding, that we're lucky. I'm a Black gay male in the world. I'm lucky to be able to get to do what I want to do for who I want to do it and be my authentic self, both in my business and outside of my business. And I don't take that for granted. So I do feel that responsibility. And I imagine, and I know that other people do as well, because, and like I said, it's tough out there. And I think that we as just people in general do that, right? You want to take care of the people that look like you and are like you, or that are in the same situation, just relate better to them. And the fact that this world is built for white people and for them to succeed, and that's probably who they see more often. And I guess I shouldn't try to speak for white people because I'm not a white person. I don't know exactly what they think, but it just seems that way, that they have the ability to really take care of each other and the opportunities. And this is part of the systemic racism, right? We are in this racial wealth gap because of government policies that have been in place for centuries. And the fact that redlining still exists, when we were doing the New Deal, all of these policies were actually geared towards white families rather than Americans. That stuff lingers. And it's a part of that situation that we find ourselves in, where people want to take care of their own. And, back to the question of like, how do we deal with this? Like, what do we do? Obviously, again, we focus on what we can control, but apart from that is also creating awareness around this issue and getting people in power who can change it. I feel like the Biden-Harris administration has done great work around giving minority business owners opportunities and giving them money, giving them the ability to build their business, because they also know, right? Entrepreneurism is the way to really close this gap. And if we want to really do something of it, we can't do it by ourselves. We can focus on what we can control and use our talents, but also it takes full-on government policy and government change. The talks around reparations, right? I feel like the system has been stacked against us for so long. The ability to come back is not going to just happen by itself. Systemic change needs to be made, and we need to all work together to make that happen.
All right, Pep, let's listen to Dr. Nicole Truesdell. I love that name. I really love the name Truesdell. Sounds like a detective. She's an abolitionist. She's not a detective, though. She's an abolitionist, a creative, astrologer, and a dreamer. With a background in anthropology, she uses her knowledge to deconstruct societal mindsets and imagine a world without oppressive systems governing us. And she's the founder of the Abolitionist Dreamscapes. She helps others break the things that do not allow us life while dreaming of other ways to live in the now. And she's pretty big on TikTok. So if you love the Clock app, you can check her out at Dr. Nicole Truesdell. That's Dr. Nicole Truesdell. All right, let's give it a listen.
My name is Dr. Nicole Truesdell. So I'm an independent scholar. I'm a former academic who left higher ed after around the time of the pandemic, so 2021. So currently I'm the founder of Abolitionist Dreamscapes, which is a creative space that I work with folks individually and collectively to imagine, to both break things that don't work for them, which is oppressive systems, and also dream of new ways of being. So I do that through my online presence. I teach on TikTok and YouTube. I also do a Patreon and podcast and a lot of one-on-one work with folks and organizations to have them kind of reimagine what could living in life look like if we don't follow capitalism. For me, abolitionism is really breaking oppressive holds, right? So we understand abolitionism through kind of abolishing the prison industrial complex, which is one aspect of an oppressive system that keeps folks confined and also makes our bodies a commodity. So this interest started for me since I was young, honestly. I didn't necessarily call myself an abolitionist until, quite frankly, recently when I was trying to figure out the way to kind of frame everything I was doing. So a lot of the work I do, I'm an anthropologist by training. So that's my PhD is in, and my background in that discipline is one that ranges from forensics, biological. So I did skeletal analysis and looked at the human and ideas of race and racial differences through skeletal analysis. That led me into looking at sociocultural, political, legal understandings of that through the concept of the state and citizenship. And then I also looked at that in medical, legal aspects in my postdoc. So kind of spanning the gamut of what is human difference and why do we understand human difference through the concept of race, right? So that really got me into kind of initially anti-racist work, right? Because I was looking at race and racism. And so when I was younger, in my 20s, I was like, well, if you do anti-racism then. But that realized I was limiting the ability for me to really not only interrogate, but also dream of what we can do, right? Because all of it is basically saying, well, if this is racist, then we can change it by fixing a law or something, right? But I realized that it's not just about like fixing something, it's about breaking it. Because if you don't understand why we are here, all you do is just kind of piecemeal, I call it the Band-Aid effect, right? So when you realize that how you understand yourself is through the lens or through the sight of how the state needs you to see yourself, right? Then you're like, well, then who am I if I don't want to be that, right? When I finished my degree, it was 2011. And at the time, I was trying to figure out the kind of work I wanted to do, because that's where I started shifting from the anti-racism into more decolonial praxis, right? And so initially I was on the job market, both academic market, but also the kind of applied market. And I'll be honest, at that time, there was no jobs that were looking or interested in folks who did scholarship on race and racism at all. Like it was not a thing people weren't interested in. It was a lot about water rights, Botswana, Africa, Southeast Asia. There was a lot of different concentrations, right? Concentrations heavily trend. That's what you have to realize. So if I had been on the market I want to say, and the market's never been great for academics, quite frankly, since the 70s, honestly. But recently, if I would have been in the market with what I do and the research I engage with in, say, 2018, 19, I would have had a plethora of opportunities. I wouldn't not necessarily would have gotten it, but I at least would have had opportunities. 2011, 12, there was nothing. And I also, because I did my work in the UK, my field site was the UK, because I wanted to understand from literally the metropole, from the location that constructed the US nation state, which is the British Empire, right? I wanted to understand the concept from that location. So me working in the UK, I worked within Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, they call them BAME, organizations there, looking at race and racism and citizenship through the concept of racialized citizenship. I was told I was not marketable. I was told that there was no. So then when I applied for jobs, I did a lot of applied work. I was doing different types of fellowships, finally got a position as the McNair Director, which is a federally funded program for first-generation college, low-income, and minoritized students who want to get a PhD. Now, I was a McNair Scholar. That's what helped me get into, understand the terrain and apply and afford it and all that stuff. So when I was doing that job and that work and working with those populations of students, that helped me really start to apply a lot of the academic work I've been doing around human difference and this idea of community engagement. Because again, I was working in the organizations in the UK. I started to engage in a lot of community literature and community work around what does it mean to have an asset-based approach to communities. So if we see the communities as actually understanding that they know what they need and we listen to them. In that work is where I started to really engage with the decolonial and decolonial understandings of not just of working against oppressive systems, but also working with others, right? So it's not just about fight, it's about community. And that got me into a lot of and then also queer theory in the Black radical tradition, and then also Black feminism. So I put all those things together, right? But then on the ground, it wasn't just in the head, it wasn't just theorizing, it was literally working with students, faculty, staff, and community doing various projects. So the queerness honestly came out from me once I let go of academia. And that was really an interesting journey, because as I was doing all of this work with students and then in your institutions, I was burnt out. You're living what you're doing, right? But then the martyrdom is so easy to come onto that I felt that it was my responsibility to take the weight on, right? Literally take the weight on. And it was in the kind of really tense and really tight space that I was in there that I had to ask myself what it is I really wanted and why do I stay? And so when I asked the question, why do I stay? And then I actually answered it honestly, that's what opened up space for me to start to question other things that I'd never even questioned. Like there was never even a questioning of my sexuality, because I never questioned my sexuality. Like there was no space for it. I was the intellectual, right? I was labeled an intellectual from a very young age. And so that's what I was pushed into, either an intellectual or an athlete. 'Cause I'm 6'3". So like I was an athlete. And then because I didn't want to just be continuing being an athlete, the intellectualism came out. When you're in this kind of fight and flight all the time, you don't realize that it takes up so much space that you don't even question other things that you took for granted. So I just took for granted that I was straight. I took for granted that I was in this marriage. I took for granted that I was actually attracted to my ex-husband because, quite frankly, I met him when I was in grad school. My father had just passed 6 months earlier. And I'll be honest, I had pretty low self-esteem. I didn't really have a lot of understanding of myself as a sexual being. Even though I had sexual urges, I was also told that I was ugly. I was told that I was big. This is the early 2000s. I talk about deconstruction a lot too, because part of the abolition work that I do and the decolonial is part also deconstruction, because it's all tied together, right? And going to Catholic school, especially in the 80s and early 90s. So I'm 42, so I'm an older millennial, and I grew up in the far south side of Chicago, south side suburbs. Going to Catholic school, the neighborhood I was in was mostly Black, but the school I was in, again, was mixed, mostly white and white working class Catholic, right? On top of that, my dad's white. He looks like Santa Claus. My mama Black, right? But no one ever saw her because she actually worked. So my dad was a stay-at-home dad. So all they saw was this, and he's older too. Like he's silent generation. So he looked like Santa Claus, like hair, the beard, it was in a ponytail, all kinds of stuff, right? And but because of that, people were really confused, because here is this old white man with all these young Black kids, right? And so because of that, there was literally a marking on our body. We were always told we were not attractive. We were always told we were different. There was always this kind of conditioning, but it was couched in, this is what God says. Like I was literally told that God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, and God made the races not to mix. Right? And you don't realize how much, even when you say, I don't believe all that, you don't realize how much that literally shapes your subconscious so much that you then don't realize what you didn't question. So going back to the present day, right, of the meme coming out. So when I finally left higher ed, because I was burnt out, and it broke my heart, quite frankly. Like I have a lot of passion for what I do. When I realized that I was always going to be betrayed if I kept in this space, and I was always going to continue to break my heart. And I realized that I didn't want to do that anymore because it was breaking my body down. When I left, and I asked the question, why do I stay? And I couldn't answer it without martyring myself, because it was always about somebody else or other populations, right? When I couldn't stay for me, again, that opened up space. So when I opened up that space and then I left and I moved out of Rhode Island, because I was, again, working at Brown, then the pandemic lockdowns happened. I was teaching, and I was teaching online. So then we moved back to where my ex's family was from, was Michigan. And it was in Michigan in those kind of 2 years. And this is also during the eclipse season of Taurus and Scorpio. I'm an astrologer as well. I'm a Scorpio rising with a Taurus moon and a Leo sun. It is fixed in this milk, okay? So there was a way that the energy of the eclipse season mixed with me ending a part of my life that I was so dead set on making work, but I couldn't. When that space opened, I kept realizing that I wasn't happy then also in my marriage. It wasn't just the job. I moved all this stuff, and then I'm moving into a small town in the middle of Michigan. It's all white. All these things I started to realize that I had left, or I had run from the rest of my life in order to center the work. Like when you when you let go of that identity that you were told also your destiny, like who told us that our job is why we come down? That is a raggedy ass way to say that this is why we come to live, right? Who said that, right? Who does that benefit? And so that's what opened up the space, and that started to question. And then again, that Scorpio eclipse, that very first one happened in that November. It felt like my brain broke because I finally asked myself the question, girl, are you straight? I literally was like, Nicole, are you straight? And then I heard my own voice be like, I think I'm queer. And then I was like, what? And then I called a friend. I felt like I was losing my mind, honestly, because again, you don't question. And then you question, and then you're like, well, damn, there's the answer. And I was talking to her and I was like, listen, I think I'm queer. And she was like, yeah. I was like, well, then maybe I'm bi. And she was like, okay. I was like, well, no, I said, I think I might just be really gay. I think I like women. And then she was like, yeah. So when I allowed myself to, and then my husband was gone. Like him and my child were like with his family in Florida. So when they came back and I'm looking at him, and I just came out and I said, listen, I think I'm gay. Um, I don't know how this is going to work. I think I'm really gay. And so we tried to make it work. We actually did went to the marriage counseling for a little bit, but the thing is the marriage was already on the rocks. So this was just the inevitability of me, again, that fixed energy. I was trying to make it work and fix, and we're told that it's our responsibility to make the marriage work. Like marriage is hard, right? So talk to my other friends, other Black women, like, I don't know if I want to be married to this white man no more. They were like, no, it's okay. He's a good one. It was always an excuse. We give a lot of excuses for why folks should stay in messed up relationships. When, we figured out we needed to, break up and move out. When I moved out and decided to move then to Chicago, where I'm from originally, I was also then I said nervous that maybe I was just trying to leave. And so then I was like, I need to date, even though I've been dating in 15 years because we've been together for a long time. And the dating scene definitely has changed. It is ghetto in these streets. But it was also great because I was learning how to live, right? So this is a part of the kind of idea of the decolonial deconstruction that I realized I was doing, because in dating and having, I had a whole 6-month situationship. I still don't know what the hell it was, honestly, but she was always here, right? And dating other people and having sex with other, finally with women, I realized I was really gay. And that not only was that, but I also felt finally a sense of being at home in my body. Like it was the first time I realized that, and I'm realizing this the last few months, honestly, is that I'm actually am more comfortable in my body now than I ever have been. And I'm understanding that it was because I was trying to operate in a very hetero world that I never fit in, but I would thought it was me that I needed to kind of contort myself in, right? Versus just asking the question, do I even want to be here? So when we talk about abolitionism and wealth, right, what we need to realize is that you cannot understand the systems that we are in that are confining us if you don't understand that they are all built upon the commodification of the body. Right. And so that's where it comes down to. So abolitionism, again, the whole point of the kind of prison industrial complex that a lot of folks situate abolitionism work in is because that becomes the new plantation. Right. We have to understand that is the new plantation system that extracts labor from bodies that they do not necessarily have to pay. Right. People say, well, there's a cost to kind of housing people who are prisoners. Yes, but there's also a number put on all those prisoners' heads because that is a value dollar to that institution. Right? That is nothing more than the same system that founded this whole nation, which is the plantation system. So when we're talking about wealth, right, and we're talking about breaking oppressive holds that have told us that we are nothing more than workers in a system, right? So your whole purpose and destiny and focus is to get a career that you stay in and you keep doing and you keep going and giving, even if they give less to you, right? that is all built upon breaking us down to nothing more than production machines. So when you don't understand that there is more to life, right? And you tied your sense of self and your value as a human to your money, to what you earn, to how much you have in your bank account, right? You have now become a tool and vessel of capitalism. The spirit of capitalism now can engage with you and use you in the way it wants to, because you have now given essentially, whether consciously, subconsciously, to it, your body. Right. So when we think about the abolishing and abolishing oppressive systems, we have to abolish the way that we are attached to the system that has taught us through time and space, and that we also then teach ourselves and one another, our children, community, all that stuff, that you are only valuable based upon what you work and how much money you make. So for me, I define wealth as essentially being able to express your full humanity. Right. And by that I mean how do you wake up? How do you see the day? Is there a way that you understand that if you don't earn $1 that morning or $1 that day or $1 that week, that you have every right to still take up space, that you have every right to be? That the idea of wealth, right, includes it's a holistic one. And I hate how New Age spirituality and health and wellness have really kind of co-opted these words that are really important. But wealth is having the ability to fully be able to rest and wake up and not feel guilty for taking your body to rest. Right? Because we are, it's again, going back, it's you realizing that you are a human being. Wealth is realizing you are a human being, and that human beingness is a body that is finite, you are not a machine. You cannot keep going. You will not sleep when you are dead, because when you are dead, you actually go to work. So you better sleep in the living. And I think, and that's what it is. And so a wealth for me is also, and this might seem a little weird, but I'll explain it. Wealth to me is also a respect for dead. Therefore, we respect life. When we don't respect death, when we don't understand that there is a cycle to life and involves death, right? As we talk about this, as above, so below, right? All this kind of stuff. When we don't really respect death, when we don't understand that things will die, then we don't understand what it means to live. So then if you don't understand what it means to live, but then we are fed that living is wealth, then of course, all you're going to be doing is working your whole life. That's what you think, right? You are now the walking dead, because there is no wealth for you. You're not filling yourself up. There's no bounty for you, but you are filling the coffers for those select few. Right? So wealth, when we take the idea and sight of wealth, and we don't use the sight of the state, we don't use the sight of oppression, we don't use the sight of capitalism to define it for us, then it opens up a whole set of possibilities. And actually the definition will then differ depending upon the person and population. I think if we're going to reimagine, then we have to center the body, especially the Black body, because the Black body then is the first side of the commodity that rendered us down into nothing more than laborers, right? So this is why Black capitalism will never work for us. We can't use a system that literally needs our bodies as the commodity for its wealth. That doesn't make any sense, right? And we got fed that too. Again, we got fed a lot of this crap in the media, and it came through as spiritual and it came through as cultural, right? It's really insidious how it came through, because having a few Black billionaires does not actually shift any of the structural issues that have prohibited all of us from being able to have our basic needs met without killing ourselves, right? There's a cost to living. Like, again, it doesn't make any sense. There's no sense being made when you start asking the question. So when we're thinking about this idea of capitalism and the Black body, right? Capitalism is built upon the Black body. So therefore, if we're breaking that, then we have to then take back the concept of the body, sit in our embodiment, and believe what our body is telling us. So the body is central. And then the Black body has to become a kind of centralized part of that, because it is the Black body that has always denied our experiences, but also used as the locations to show how inequitable the society is. So if we don't talk about this stuff, then you're going to have all these white leftists coming in, and kind of the liberals coming in who want to tell us it's all about class, right? It's all about us all being workers. But the only reason why we have the worker today is because we had the enslaved back body before that then gave the template for the state to be able to transfer the enslaved person into then different types of workers, because there's different types of workers here, and not all workers are compensated. So we see this actually in different moments of time, right? Once enslavement ended, we had Reconstruction, and Reconstruction didn't work. And W.E.B. Du Bois's book, Black Reconstruction, is really still the most foundational work around that. He wrote that in the early 1900s. So what happens is you start to see those who were formerly enslaved then being able to essentially make their own way, right, in one way, shape, or form. Now, laws were still put in place still to prohibit that. We have to remember something. When you are the commodity of the system, right, the system cannot have you then gaining wealth from it as well, because you are the wealth. We have to remember, we are the wealth, y'all. Okay, so put that in context. So then what happens is you have a number of populations that actually ended up being very successful. This is the thing. Enslaved people were highly skilled, y'all. And people are like, well, they couldn't. It's not even about, the enslaved people also ran the books. Enslaved people also ran the household. You have to understand something. A lot of these enslaved, these so-called masters were incompetent. Think about the so-called genius billionaires today. How intelligent are they? How really intelligent are they? Okay? That is the master of the plantation. Okay, I need us to understand that. So Black folks have always ran white folks' house. Let's be real. Okay, so then when we come out of that, then you see different populations being quote unquote successful, right, in the image of the state. So of course we have Tulsa in, was it 1929, I believe it was. You also have Seneca. You also have Rosewood, right? You got, but you also have a lot of successful communities in the Northeast, in the New England, right? You have them coming up to various parts of Detroit and Chicago. My mama's family's from the South, and they were the first Black barbers out in Pontiac, Michigan, and was very successful there. So we saw a lot of families make those migrations and set up different types of businesses, right? This is why the entrepreneurial spirit is so prevalent within these kind of Black cultures, American Black culture, because one, that was many times the only things we could do in order to earn, right? We had to literally make our own stuff. But two, it's also something we knew how to do because we literally constructed the state, we constructed the foundations. This is what happens, though. Anytime you saw Black wealth, white rage occurred, and they broke it, and they burnt it, and they genocide those who were there. Okay, it has been a consistent thing throughout history. When we build, they burn. Brown versus Board of Education really only happened because whites did not have the wealth nor the educational space to successfully educate their own kids. And they needed money, right? It all comes down to money. Anytime the space opened up and quote unquote gave Black folks and other non-white folks kind of resources or kind of quote unquote rights, it always benefited for the white majority. It was for their gain. So Brown versus Board back in the down South, right? Even though there was not a lot of money, there was still a lot of wealth. Let's going back to the first question you asked about how we define wealth. A lot of wealth. Them Black teachers could teach, as we know, to this present day. And they taught well, and especially in places. I actually did a book review of historical ethnography about this in Baltimore. So we saw it in Baltimore. We saw it in different pockets of various parts of the Deep South, in which those kind of communities, especially middle-class communities, there were actually a lot of Black middle-class communities, because you could afford at that time to have one person working and come home, right? So between the teachings and then men usually being able to do kind of more various types of what we would call blue collar labor, right? There was wealth in the communities along with this kind of mutual aid. So you had people who would also engage in child rearing, right? You would have people engaging in food making. There was this kind of idea of community, again, that was very reminiscent of what we engaged with on the plantation. Let's be real. This is a generational thing that we learn. So then the thing is, though, when you have a whole system and you buy into whiteness and the white identity, and you have not been trained by the state to actually take care of yourself because you have other people taking care of you generationally, when it comes chicken come home to roost is what Malcolm was really trying to say, right? Then they needed to do something. And what does the state know how to do when it is a capitalistic system that is built upon a racial hierarchy? It took from the population that it always took from. So then we have equality, so-called equality, right? And then what happens? It's little Black kids who have to go into white spaces in order to quote unquote desegregate them, right? Being met with white violence. But all of that was for resources. That was nothing more really than resource allocation and being able then to take the wealth of the Black community, which is not just our money, y'all, it's the mind and it's the body, it's the spirit. It's the ability to create from nothing. It's the ability to imagine and dream. It's the ability to go into the dreamscapes and bring from the dreamscapes into the reality different ways to kind of live. It's the soul, right? It is the spirit. But when you have attached yourself to the spirit of capitalism that is extractive, that's individualistic, but it's not really an individual, you are just reproducing a norm, right? And then you see a whole population thriving, but they're thriving in ways that you were told was for you and you can't do it, right? That is the embodiment of white rage. But it really is, it's the embodiment of the spirit of capitalism wanting what, again, you have. And if you have, and that is wealth. So when we think about wealth, y'all, the dollar, and let's be real, the dollar's gonna go down. That dollar's a hot ass mess. It ain't gonna go down tomorrow, but it's gonna go down, okay? But that dollar, as we have seen, does not actually give you wealth because the floor will always move. So let's go to the present day now, right? So then we have all of that happening. Brown happens in the 60s. We get our so-called rights, right? 70s, we get more so-called rights. And then what happens, then the 80s, we get nonstop austerity. We get trickle-down economics, right? So all of a sudden the state says, well, yeah, we took all of y'all stuff now. And so we're going to hoard it and we're going to trickle it down. Right? They took our wealth, y'all. And it's not just the money. They took our minds, they took our bodies. And then they told us it was our responsibility over time to make the space comfortable for them still, because now we're in it at the table versus behind the table or under the table or behind the bar. You know what I mean? So now in the present day, we're at this crossroads because not only is the system not sustainable, it's completely cracking. No matter how much money you make now, even if you make over 100,000, depending upon where you live, that is not enough to live. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense, right? And so you can't afford to eat, you can't afford to clothe yourself, you can't afford your housing, but yet we are told this is wealth. So then we have to ask the question, who is defining it and why are we using somebody else's definition that is taking from us because they got wealth? But the wealth they have is because we are sitting in these kind of subjugated spaces. So for me, self-care practices, especially as Black queer folks, right, really involves us believing ourselves. It really involves us getting in our bodies and having to sit with the feelings that we have suppressed because they are uncomfortable, because we may have felt like we couldn't have faced them. Maybe we felt like we would break, right? But there is no way to care for yourself if you are not in yourself to begin with. Right? It's a false illusion, and it's scary. And is it easy? No, but it's not easy right now. We have to realize that none of this has been easy. We have been living in a kind of fog and, like I say, Walking Dead, that we think, kind of superficial, buying a candle or be taking a bath will help. In the moment it will, right? It'll make you feel good in the moment, but then that it's a Band-Aid. So for me, self-care really means getting into the self. So getting into your body and allowing yourself to believe your body and believe what your body is telling you. And so my thing is, if you do that and you have hunger, do you actually then satiate your hunger? If you realize that you have not bathed in a while, right? Do you allow yourself to care for self in a way that you can get your basic needs met? Because when we get back to the body and come back to those foundational things of care, right? Just because our bodies need care, like they're the vessels that hold the spirit, right? Again, you're not a human until you're in a damn body. And when we allow ourselves to do that care, then we realize what we actually need. We don't even know what we need until we're in the body, and we really need rest. This is why I love Tricia Hershey's work on the NAP ministry, Rest is Resistance. And I engage that a lot with a lot of my work with the dreamscape, because you cannot dream of something new if you do not rest, but you can't rest if you're not in your body. So all this self-care And the self-care work, especially as queer Black folks, is getting you to realize that your body is not wrong, that you don't have to be scared or run from it, even though many times many of us were told our bodies were wrong, or we were told our bodies needed to do certain things. If we can take back that understanding that our bodies are our sites of love of self, then we can figure out what self-love really means when we can figure out what our body needs for care.
Maurice Harris is a Los Angeles-based artist who is best known as the visionary behind Bloom and Plume, a bespoke floral design studio located in Echo Park. Maurice's unique point of view, sense of humor, craftsmanship, and dedication to his community have made him both one of the most sought-after floral designers in Los Angeles and one of the most followed florists on Instagram. I love Maurice Harris, and I actually a while back did a photo shoot with Maurice Harris that I never released the pictures from, and maybe today is the day I debut my Maurice Harris photos. Is today the day? Anyway, let's listen to Maurice Harris.
My name's Maurice Harris. I am the creator of all things Bloom and Plume. Bloom and Plume is a floral design studio in Los Angeles. We also have a coffee shop that's next door to the studio. It's in Echo Park. We basically are kind of like the haute couture of the flower world. So it's very high end, it's very luxurious, mildly obnoxious, which is why we have the coffee shop so that it could be more relatable. When I started the business, I was not thinking that it was as luxurious as it is. And so it has been an interesting journey 13 years in, recalibrating to speak to my people as opposed to just rich people, which are usually not people that look like me. So that has been an interesting journey, and I have a lot to say about it. Let me tell you. I chose flowers as a medium because I felt like it was relatively untapped when I was thinking about what career path to take, slash, I think we are what we see. So, and what we're exposed to. My family is a bunch of creatives, and my mother is a crafter. She's a musician. My grandmother is a milliner. She makes church lady hats, and also a florist. And so I used to watch her as a child make flower arrangements and stuff. And so I used to use that as a way to create, I guess. As I was thinking about how I was going to explore my creativity, flowers made sense because it was an avenue that hadn't really been explored or exploited as much as, like, say, styling or fashion design or hair, or, and these are all things I'm interested in as a Black gay man and very stereotypical in that way, which I absolutely love. And so flowers was a way where I thought I would be able to have something to say where people might listen more. I have always known that I was different and that I did not assimilate into the world that was presented to me. And in the same sentence, I didn't know what that thing was, right? So again, kind of going back to what I was saying in the very beginning about we are what we're exposed to and we see. I didn't know any gay people. I didn't know any people that identified outside of a heteronormative lifestyle. And I do know that my parents went out of their way. They have been exposed to these things. And so they had went out of their way to always tell me that being gay was bad, even though I didn't even know what that was all the way, or that, like, God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. I mean, so tired. But that was my exposure. So I knew that that was not a safe thing to even think about or explore. So I suppressed it like it did not exist. My parents told me that I couldn't date until I graduated from college. And so I took that and ran with it. I ended up having like a little girlfriend in high school, and I was so scared to tell my parents about it because I was like, they said I couldn't have a girlfriend until I graduated from college, but I'm really in love with this girl. And child, when I tell you, they did not care one bit. They were like, ooh, there's hope. But I think it was when I left the nest and I went to college. I went to Otis College of Art and Design here in Los Angeles. And it's there that I began to explore what it meant to be different, I would say, and specifically with my queerness. My best friend my best friend of all time is this beautiful person named Sari Zamora. She passed away a couple years ago. And I met her my first day of college, and I thought she was a bitch. And she wasn't. She's the first person to actually love me wholeheartedly in all the ways that I show up. And she was always trying to nurture, like you could just, the thing is, I've always been the same person. I've just been oozing what I am. I'm only good at being myself. So like anybody that sees me move or meets me is like, oh, that's a gay person. Like it's just not even it's not up for debate. However, I was in denial of that. And so she was just trying to create a safe space for me. Sari's a trans woman and she hadn't transitioned then. But they were just trying to create a safe space for me. And I literally thought that they were the devil, the reincarnation of the devil, because my parents told me that when you go down to Los Angeles, the devil is going to be busy and he's going to send his demons and try to make you gay. And so I am like a 19-year-old, full-on adult, 19, 20, thinking that I have met the devil. And so I was just so scared to even explore my like queerness. But then of course, over time, like I got more comfortable. I would even say, I'm 42 years old and the residue of all of that like hatred towards queerness, I still live with it, right? Like I can be very homophobic and certain like that internalized homophobia lives within me because it was like how I was raised. And so dismantling and unraveling all of that has been a very interesting challenge. 12 years of therapy, though, we're going strong. Wealth is such a loaded term that we use in this country. And I think many people think of wealth in terms of money. I would say your more standard way of looking at it is, to me, true wealth is like freedom, which I think can be very much a state of mind. But also, I think if you're looking at the dollars and cents of it all, I think it's where you don't have to think about money at all. That's wealth. I know we call it generational wealth, but I actually think that's what wealth is. I think wealth is really like built among multiple generations. It doesn't just happen. I guess unless you're Beyonce and you become a billionaire in your lifetime. But I would even argue that like her parents, worked corporate, or at least her dad did, right? And so he had the ability to be able to leave said job or have the wherewithal, which then is like generational. It like set her up to be able to do what she did, right? I say that I'm the Beyonce of flowers. And I think if my dad would have been a corporate person that had the means to really invest and follow my career, I might be in a similar place because of how talented I am as a person. But I wasn't afforded the same sort of backing, if that makes sense. So I think wealth really is rooted in family ties or like connections to outside of one's own person. But like your peace of mind is like your sanity, and your sanity is like your currency. And for me, that is a sense of wealth because I am living my best life the best way that I know how to live it. And I feel very free for doing that, which, back to my original answer, wealth is freedom. Black people, when it comes to wealth, inequality, or wealth in this country, we're fucked. We're screwed. Like, we have not been set up to win. And which is insane because we're always winning. It's actually nuts. If we actually were given our proper due, can you only imagine? It would be game over. But like, it's rigged. And as like an entrepreneur, as a person that like I have my own business. I have a couple different businesses. And my brother is a corporate banker. And listening to his stories around like, and he works like private banking, and like his job, he's literally on the quote unquote diversity and inclusion team of the banking division of his bank. And what that looks like is he's supposed to go out and find more Black clients for the bank to work with. But the point of entry is so insane that most Black people don't qualify. And we're talking about Black folks that have businesses that are taking in $30 million of revenue, right? Like these really kind of extreme examples. And it's still like when it's all said and done, they're not in the hundreds of millions, so they don't qualify in the same way, right? Capitalism doesn't care about your creativity. Capitalism doesn't care about your ethnicity. Capitalism doesn't care about your gender. It cares about the bottom line. And so until people really start to focus their energy, right? Like it isn't going to happen. I think it's annoying, but like it's for Black folks to really change our outcome. We have to be very strategic about how we spend our dollars and sacrificing our convenience as a result. That's the hard part, right? Because everybody is like, I love this idea, but not in my backyard. I think everybody should have, affordable housing, blah, 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 blah. But then it's like, well, will you rent your house for super cheap? Well, no, I got to make some money, blah, blah, blah. And I think, the more it takes a little extra effort to find like a Black owned business to support. It takes a little bit more grace because it is not a well-oiled machine that has the same funding and the same resources as other types of businesses do. But our expectations are often even higher because the onus is on us to lift ourselves out. This concept of pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. It's like, I don't even have on boots. I'm literally wearing raggedy ass sandals. I literally have on Crocs right now. I don't even have on a boot. You know what I mean? When I came to our coffee shop, we had under market rent. We had, I have been working on my credit for years at this point. So my credit was fab. My brother's credit was better than my brother's credit. And my brother's credit is phenomenal. And we both had, I had my own business that I had been doing for a while, 6 or 7 years at that point. My brother had his corporate job. We weren't going to be taking a salary from the business, so it was able to do its own thing. My brother wrote an insane business model, where it was modeled out for all the numbers and how it worked. I mean, it was crazy. In fact, we got a coffee consultant that gave us their numbers from their coffee shop, so that was in our area, so that we could properly model. We literally had real life information. And when we went to the bank to get a loan so that we could actually build this, we got 30 no's. Everything about what we did, we had lined everything up. We even had saved money so that we because it was like, well, nobody's just going to give us money. We have to have so much money ourselves, like to be a part of this loan process, blah, 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 for the SBA. We did everything. Everything was just like, and my business was already like thriving, and it was an extension of the brand and all of this stuff. And we didn't get anything. And it wasn't until my aunt is a big deal in SBA lending or something like that. I didn't even know this, to be honest with you. I love my aunt, but I didn't know that she was like a big deal in this world. And somebody was like, "Oh, you know Hilda Kennedy?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's my aunt." And it was like I got fast tracked. We got fast tracked, and we ended up getting the loan. It was from like a Black SBA lender, but like that's what did it. So even though we had done all the work to prepare, it still took the hookup to get there. So imagine all the hookups that like white folks have. Capitalism has no judgment. Capitalism is all about the bottom line. And the only way that capitalism works is by exploitation. Something or someone has to be exploited. 9 times out of 10, it's labor. And what does that look like in 2023 when slavery is over? It means that my brother and I started a business where we can't get paid from it. That's exploitation at the end of the day, right? Because you're doing a bunch of work for no profit. We've had we're debt free now, so we've gotten ourselves out of our hole. But our coffee shop will have been open for 5 years, and I don't know, maybe we've made $700-800 or something like that. I don't know, like nothing to write home about, like as a profit. And the catch-22 here, get into this. The catch-22 here is for the business to really, really thrive and for us to like really like take off, we need to be working in that business full time. But in order for us to work in that business full time, we would have to not, I don't even know how we would do that, to be honest. Like if we actually had to rely on the coffee shop to pay our bills, it would be closed. And I actually think we're working on something quite spectacular. But that is the definition of capitalism, right? We just now like hide where the labor is. And it's just perfectly acceptable that if you're going to start a business, you're most likely going to be working for free. And people expect it. People love paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for flowers. As soon as they see my labor number, they think I'm insane. And I'm like, the labor is more expensive than the flowers. People are the most expensive part of a business. How am I supposed to get a $10,000 installation to happen in a matter of hours by myself? Like, so I think we're just out of reality. And like, we've been sold this idea that it really does work, that there is a way to do this. And it's like, I literally have been trying to skin this cat. I have been trying to peel this apple. I have been trying to like squeeze this lemon, all kinds of different ways. And it all comes out the same. Exploitation. How do you maintain your sanity through all of this nonsense? Go for a walk. Take a deep breath. Like, I just think it's like, I think race is a construction, a social construction. Capitalism is another construction. And so how you decide to participate in it and how you allow it to rule your life is like the outcome you're going to get, right? So that's not to say like these things aren't important and not affecting your life, but if you just overly obsess about anything, that's going to be your outcome. Your thoughts are very powerful. And so it's about quieting the mind. It's about like your sanity, keeping your peace, like reclaiming your time, like having boundaries, because we all think like, I don't know why after COVID, everybody was like, literally, that was the universe telling us the way we have been living does not work. Stop. Sit your ass down somewhere. Slow down. Stop. And I'm about to take a bunch of you motherfuckers out. No, did we listen? We did not. People were just like, I gotta get back to work. Get me back on the front line. And it's just like, no. Like, the government should have taken care of us, right? That's what we're there for, like the infrastructure to help, like, make sure that people aren't going hungry or losing their homes and that kind of stuff. But like, we should have been reformatting how we live because it doesn't work. And so I will say to any and everybody, my life has turned around like 180 as soon as I got still, as soon as I got quiet, as soon as I like really started to rethink how I function in the world. When I think about how entrepreneurship has changed and shaped my life personally, it really popped my bubble of what I thought success looked like. I really thought if I just worked really hard and I outworked everybody and I used my little talent and I like cultivated that and took it even further, and I had a dynamic personality and I like went out and met people and networked and just stayed in my lane, that it would all work out. And again, it just goes back to like, there are so many things outside of my control and my power, like generational wealth. Like, I don't have grandparents that set my parents up to set me up, like it just wasn't like that. Everybody was just trying to keep it together the best way that they could. But yet I'm watching the same TV shows and the same commercials as every person in America. So I think that I can fulfill the American dream. But I'm realizing every day that that is a edited story that is rooted in something that is slightly true, but is just painted in a way that is really out of touch with what it means to wake up every morning and put food on your table on your own without a job, like a 9-to-5 type job. I'm very content with where I'm at in my life because I have worked corporate and I have both worked for myself, and both of them are trash. So it's work. The definition of work is work. Like, it's not like, let's have a good time. Let's be fulfilled. Let's and I think I was disillusioned that my job could fulfill me, could actually, and if I worked for myself, I really thought I had like done a whole life hack. And the reality is work is work is work. Even if you do something you enjoy, who are you selling it to? Yourself? Like, somebody else is involved in this, and so their opinion matters. And so how do you make that exchange work? To all the young folks out there, it's always annoying getting advice from people, I think, because you're going to do what you're going to do, right? However, I really have been through some shit. And I kind of know what I'm talking about in this particular area. And I would say it a couple different ways. A, don't be in a rush to do anything. Like, do not be in a rush to start a business. Don't do it. Unless you got a bunch of money and you got somebody that is willing to bankroll all of your mistakes, don't do it. Learn as much as you can on somebody else's dollar. And also perfect your craft, whatever it is. Like, what does Malcolm Gladwell say? It takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. Like, that's real. People be looking at my little TikTok videos and my little Instagram videos and being like, oh my God, I love the way you work and blah, blah, blah. It's like we're taking either me spending 10 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes making an arrangement, and you're seeing it made in a minute and a half. And it takes me no time to do it because I've been doing this for over 10,000 hours. So I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm working at. I know the process. So like it just comes out of my body, out of my hands, almost like it's natural. And so comparing is despairing. Don't do that. Be on your path. Stay focused on what you're doing. And like figure out how to do it well. There is always room for cream. Cream rises to the top. As much as I was talking my shit earlier, like, and in whatever way in the world you're supposed to exist, you will. But don't be in a hurry to get there. I will say it like this. Think of all your famous child stars that are adults and how many of them are actually sane. It does a number on you. Don't be in a hurry. My brother was telling me the statistic around how like 70%, my brother is such a data oriented person. So whenever I have to like come up with facts, it's usually data related things. It's from my brother Moses, who's my business partner. He was telling me, and he's like low-key sometimes my therapist. I love that guy. I love my siblings. Anyways, he was telling me that like, I think it's like 70% of CEOs are in like their 60s and 70s. Because that's when you finally like, it all gels together. When you're in your 20s and 30s, and I'm now in my 40s, like you're really figuring it out. You like, experience is real, right? Don't rob yourself of your experiences as a young person. I remember I wanted to be so old, so fast. If I could go back and not have a job again, my God. Ooh, where all I had to do was get a good grade? Damn, what a nice life. So like, don't be in a hurry to do adult shit because adult shit ain't cute. Figuring out your taxes as an entrepreneur is a mess. Paying an accountant, paying a bookkeeper, like, it's just like, it's a lot. Or it like, if that's not your skill set, that's not my skill set. I'm a creative. So I know how to look at numbers, but I'm also like, like it's too much. So who wants to be in a hurry to do that shit? Not me. Don't do it. Take your time. And you think what you see on the internet is curation. Donald Trump became our president, not to get overly political, but Donald Trump became our president because he was a quote unquote successful businessman. Why do we think he's a successful businessman? Because he was on a reality show called The Apprentice. And they edited, meaning they took out hundreds of hours of footage to give you a 30-minute episode that makes sense. So they were able to curate that story to say it however they wanted to. And so just to take things at face value is dangerous. Oh my God, this person's life is so great. They're always on vacation. They're living their best life. We don't know what they do at night. We don't know how hard they work. We don't know what sacrifice they had to make to be able to do that. We don't know what bills not being paid for them to be on that trip. Like we just don't know. And so projecting your life onto that your life isn't great the way that it is, or that it should be like this, is just chaos. Stay in your damn lane.
Nothing going on but the rent. Ow, got to have a J-O-B if you want to be with me. Nobody?
I love that song, actually. It's one of my favorites. I was trying to do some math, which is why I was
Okay,
not
that's why you like
engaging with
blanked
you.
out.
Um,
Your eyes rolled in the back of your head, and you some.
yeah, girl, listen, math is hard for me. Okay, not all of
Same
us were
here, baby. Same
great
here.
students. Math is hard for me. But I saw the statistic basically that was like if you've earned like $100 a day, or if you earn like $500 a day since the day that William Shakespeare was born, like literally $500 a day
Since
since
Shakespeare, what does
Shakespeare
that have to
was
do with? Okay,
born.
talk to me.
You have to you walk with me, go
Okay.
with me on this journey. If you earn um like a $500 a day since William Shakespeare was born, you would like maybe begin to come close to the amount of money that like Elon Musk has.
What? Hey Google, when was William Shakespeare born?
And I was trying to do some
April
math, but
1564. So 1564. So no, so it's like a lot of people might think that William Shakespeare was just like alive in the like 1900s, 1800s. I mean, I know people hopefully know that he wasn't, but 1564. Your point is Shakespeare was a long time ago. That's closer to when Jesus. And so
yeah, even if you made $1,000 a day since Shakespeare was born, you would still have about half the wealth of Elon Musk. I'm going to repeat that:
not
$1,000
even.
every single day. You would have because Elon Musk is at 269.8 billion US dollars. That is absolutely absurd.
That means
And if
there's
you
no
were to earn
way
a
that
thousand dollars a day,
okay, think about it. If you earned $1,000 a day, you can spend $1,000 a day. But let's say most people like can spend $1,000 on something that they've been saving up for or want. But in terms of like, you know, what you need to live and survive and just be moderately happy. I know that's very subjective. It's different for different people for sure. But if you have $1,000 a day, you're probably good to at least you can make it work $1,000 a day, and you can definitely make it work
that's a lot of money.
for hundreds of years, for thousands of years, because that's that a thousand couple. That's a long time. Um. Uh.
Yeah,
And so, well, hundreds of years rather. It,
you would still have half the money. You'd have
you'd
about
have only half the
167
money. And so when we talk
167.
about like somebody like Elon Musk or one of these billionaires going without or being taxed at least the same percentage that the everyday people are being taxed at, working people are being taxed at, and you know given access to, even if that person was like, I'll donate half the money that I earn for the next year, that a lot of people would be, it would fix so many problems. And that's why capitalism, it's almost like a drain that never ends. There's no filling it up. Elon Musk wants to earn more money, and that's his prerogative, but it will
But
come
why
at the
does he want
expense of
more than
all
he
the other
has? Like,
people.
what could Elon Musk do with more money? What could Elon Musk
I
do
don't
with another
know.
$1 billion? I genuinely need
I
to know.
really think it's not because it's not. There's no. I don't think that there's a moment where Elon Musk is like, oh, finally I can afford those shoes. Like I don't think that's what he's talking about. I think it's really at this point.
He's trying to afford the world. He's trying to afford the whole
Yeah,
world.
true. At this point, I really do think it's partially a status thing where he can be like, "Oh, well, now I'm the richest." So, and then all the things that you would be treated to or able to afforded to or have access to once the people around you and the people you encounter know in their mind, "Oh, this person's rich. Let's give them," because suddenly you know, I mean, you know, we've been on TV and we have a larger platform. We've certainly experienced people extending their kindness to us, people that we've never met before. And so I think that when you're of that level of rich, there's probably people who go out of their way to help you and to, you know, make sure that you're comfortable and give you things that you would normally have to buy for free. Like, you know, I'm sure that there's a Starbucks or two that Elon Musk can walk into, the person like, here it is for free. Honey, you could be begging and dying on the street and they'll be like, sorry, if you don't have that 76 cents, not that the coffee ever has costed 76 cents at Starbucks, you ain't getting it. You know, like they'll charge someone who's down and out, who's unhoused, but the billionaire, for some reason, and culturally, we seem to want to help billionaires and help people and give sympathy and give cut corners for and make I'm blanking on the
Cons.
word, make
Cunts.
what's the word? It's on the tip of my tongue.
I don't know, but you said cunt.
Making consolations, but not
You trying to say
consolations. Making
constant.
or
Okay.
affording moments for them to get by that they and not hold them accountable, where you would normally have to hold them accountable.
Are you reboot? Is your computer rebooting over there?
What's the word? Consolations. It's not consolations.
Can you give me the definition? Maybe I can help you
Yes.
find the word.
I'm affording. If there's rules that everybody has to stick by, but I'm going to cut you a break because of a certain reason. I'm going to give you a concession. Good God. Oh, no.
The computer is like, oh my God, we confirmed Peppermint's a computer made by the wealthy elite. Peppermint is a computer made by Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Oprah Winfrey, sent to give you all insidious concessions.
Anyway, that does, it actually freaked me out. That scared me because I couldn't think of the word. Oh, no. Maybe something, I got to go get neurologically checked. I don't know.
No, you're fine. Pep, you're fine. It's just that we all have moments where one day I couldn't remember the word for chair. I was like, the thing you sit on.
Lies.
You sit on it. It has 4 legs and it has a back.
Lies.
And someone's like, girl, chair? I was like, chair. That's it, chair. So, there have been several times in America where Black people have amassed a level of wealth for themselves, but then I was going to call it the mayonnaise typhoon, but Pep probably wouldn't like it.
No, we can't
the
go
white
there.
tide came through.
We do have white listeners. We can say the system of white supremacy, also known as
the whipped cream hurricane.
That sounds like some kind of
the
porn
aioli
movie.
Attackers.
Or
the aioli attack.
Yeah, mayonnaise. No, Miracle Whip, maybe. Now I got those cooking videos in my head. Those ones where like them ladies are like, let me show you how to make. And then mayonnaise is always one of the recipe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
One of the ingredients in the recipe.
Yeah.
I don't care what it is.
So there's been several times throughout America where Black communities have amassed, and I think the most famous of them all is Tulsa, the Tulsa Massacre.
Well, Black Wall Street and
by the way, you don't have to even you don't even have to have a high level of wealth for them if it's just Black folks together. I don't know if you all I don't know if you all know Move in Philadelphia. But Move was a group in Philadelphia that was
demonized.
Really interested in they're really interested in like they were very anti-capitalist, very anti the system, and were trying to essentially basically live off the grid in a city, in a big city. And it's one of the only times I know of in American history where there have been a literal bomb dropped on a city, like on a city block, destroying, I think, like 17 homes, almost 20 something homes, even people who were not in the group Move, and killing like 11 people. Some of them were children.
I think we should provide some context here because we're talking about the United States post Emancipation Proclamation, post Juneteenth, at the turn in the late 1800s, beginning, nearing the turn of the century, where the industrial age in the United States was starting to kick in, where people were getting.
You mean for Move?
No. Well, I want to go back.
Oh,
I want to go back. Hold on. I want to go back. Oh, believe me, girl, I was there. I mean, I'm from that area. I remember. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it. But I want to give our listeners, who are undoubtedly a little younger than us, a little bit of context. We're not just talking about Black folks getting rich. We're talking about the in the face of systemic violence and coming out of slavery, people at the time, who at the turn of the century, who had been born into slavery, and certainly have a mother or father was born into slavery in the United States. And this is a system where yes, you're no longer enslaved, But in a country where the climate is, we are still treating Black people as though they deserve to be slaves. And so it was not, we did not have voting. I know that this sounds obvious right now, but there's people who are probably listening who don't understand the climate back then. This is, we were being criminalized for doing things like walking on the street, walking on the wrong side of the street, looking to the wrong way when you're walking, having a certain volume of your thing. Too many of us congregating in one area. In the industrial era, where people were getting paid, Americans were starting to earn money in a way that didn't necessarily involve them having to go into a farm or work. I'm not just talking about Black people, I'm talking about everybody, where people were starting to leave the factories and go into the offices, and things like that. There were communities that were starting to become established as places to live. We wanted people to move from one state to the next to live and work in this community. And white folks started to build communities and provide incentives for people who moved into those areas. So Black people this is when redlining really started to like materialize and become like a thing, building communities that would exclude Black people having access. And so we were seeing Black people sort of free Black people who technically had the right to purchase. I'm not talking about having enough money, but right to purchase and own land. Because back then, if you weren't a person, you weren't a white man, but if you weren't a person, you couldn't own anything. If you were an enslaved person, formerly enslaved person, a Black person, you didn't have the same rights as everybody else, even though you were no longer enslaved. And so they were pushing. Once Black folks did have the rights to do those things, then they were like, okay, we're going to give you the right, but we're going to make sure you don't have the chance. And so they were held out of these areas, which meant pushing Black folks all together to certain areas because they had no choice. This was like, you can't live in any of these neighborhoods, so there's some woods out there or wherever. So then all the Black folks would get together and start to create their own communities pretty much from the ground up. And create their own services because Black folks couldn't go into the regular doctor. Black folks couldn't go into utilize the same services that were starting to become available in these early cities in the United States. And so Black folks were kind of pushed into a ghetto, basically their own neighborhoods and creating. That's where the wealth started to come up. Yeah. And that was in spite.
Nicer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So once they made these areas livable for themselves, and once they started to amass a level of wealth for themselves or started owning land, that's when it became. That's when we know a lot of the white institutions were like, "Nah, not this," and they would take a small infraction and use that as their catalyst to invade neighborhoods, to destroy land, to rip wealth from people. So it'll be like, I heard that you kissed this guy these boys kissed this girl on the cheek. I heard that this guy did something to this girl. Whether it was true or not, all they needed was the accusation. And then with that accusation, they can then justify leveling entire neighborhoods. They've done it with, and sometimes they'll do it through means of through acquiring land through legal matters. They'll do it through brute force. They did it with Seneca Village. They did it with Tulsa. They've done it. They've taken entire towns and put them underwater. You know what I mean?
And so
it's certainly not new.
No, it's not new. And one of the things that was interesting is that around that same time, this is when we were starting to see capitalism move into an era, the age of industrialism, that people were starting to become like super, super rich in a democracy. Because, before that, in a monarchy, essentially, before the United States, there were many places that were still using monarchies as their systems. And in America, capitalism was like the new thing. And it was this way of transporting, importing, exporting goods, services, and human beings that would provide those goods and services for free at the expense of their own life in America, called slavery. And people were fighting against kings, right? That's what they were in search of a land that didn't have their kings, although there was kings here in the native indigenous populations. Anyway, so they were these people. They were becoming people who were becoming very, very rich in these new industries that were starting to become burgeoning in the United States, which meant that there were people who were really, really, really poor. And then the Depression happened. And so suddenly we had white people who were poorer than the Black people that were in those neighborhoods that we had told them, you can't live in our neighborhood, right? And so then that was, I think, we were able to see, the rise of this straw person, the protection of white womanhood. That was the catalyst, like you said. A lot of times it was like the Emmett Till situation. There's the Black. They didn't have to kiss a white girl. They would be accused of things like rape or things like that if they had a romantic encounter. Maybe they were an actual couple, an interracial couple that was in love or something like that. But they didn't even have to. They would just accuse them of looking at her the wrong way, and that was all they needed to go into these communities.
So, I mean, essentially, the reason why we're bringing this all up to is let you all know that that there's been a lot of instances in America where Black people have tried to amass their own wealth by their own means on their own terms, and it was squandered by white institutions, typically the white institution is the U.S. government itself, and often in certain cases, often the U.S. government itself,
in partnership with law enforcement, who were deputized white people, white men, and white people in general. Like there were basically everybody who was white was deputized to legally punish Black folks who had been freed, formerly enslaved people, and institutionalize them, get them either into the prison system, which was basically the new slavery in our country, or get them back into indentured servitude. That's basically what that was, so that they weren't able to own. And it was like, give them a record, get them back working in these fields so that we can start to earn more money again, because slavery was what we were able to depend on, so they had a grudge.
I don't know how often the U.S. military or the armed forces or law enforcement have done airstrikes on Americans, but I know that at least two of those times, the very first time was on a Black community, and another time it was again on a Black community. It seems like they reserve airstrikes on their own citizens specifically for
Black
Black
communities,
people.
yeah.
At least we have a little bit of a scotch of evidence that seems to insinuate.
One of the things that I think is really interesting, two quick points, is that, when those neighborhoods and those towns and those communities and those businesses were destroyed, the white folks who were going in there and rioting and burning things down were able to take the wealth, take the goods, take the money literally from the safes, things like that. And since Black folks weren't able to invest in the stock market when it crashed, that's what set a differential. And this Black community suddenly had more wealth than the white communities that they had been shut out around them. But furthermore, the Black folks who then were, there was many, many, many deaths, mostly Black folks, obviously, with things like airstrikes and also people going in and shooting people in, for instance, Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1812, I can't remember what year it was. The Black folks, the ones who survived, who had owned businesses, were then barred from collecting on their filing claims with insurance that they had paid into, mind you. But because, for instance, the Tulsa massacre was called a race riot, the insurance companies and working hand in hand with the local governments and the U.S. government found a way to say, we're going to make it so that you can't recoup any of that wealth, even the insurance that you have a right to, because you were involved in a race riot, that Black folks just suddenly became wild. And they spun the narrative. Black folks just went wild, and burned their own neighborhoods down. That's oftentimes the narrative in these situations, which stopped them from being able to, get any type of retribution or collect on their insurance policies. And then they wanted to erase that from the history books. And so I hadn't heard of the Tulsa massacre until I watched The Watchmen.
Yeah, I didn't know about it. I mean, I learned about. I think I learned about it through, because anyone who knows me knows that I am obsessed with watching video essays on YouTube. And if you all want a recommendation for a few video essays, the one that I can really recommend you right now, his name is FD Signifier. I cannot say enough great things about FD Signifier, you have to go watch his videos. You will learn so much. He's an educator turned YouTuber, and he's just he combs through these topics with
Yeah, his videos are at
this
least an hour and a
precision
half
of a
long. So just get ready. You know that it's an
yeah, they are
investment. This is
long.
not
Yeah,
a 10-minute video.
yeah, he comes to them with the precision of a surgeon, but there's
So
humor,
good.
there's fun, there's multiple insights. He goes to lots of different people to get information. Do you watch FT Signifier
Of course I
videos?
do. I've
Oh
been
my
on
god, I
FT
didn't know you were like
Signifier. Oh yeah, I'm.
I didn't know you was a YouTube queen like that. I didn't know you was into the YouTube like that,
Oh
Henny.
honey.
But yeah, y'all get into FD. Maybe one day I'll try to reach out to FD Signifier and see if I can like collab or be in one of his videos. I think he's
I think
just
we should
really,
bring
really
somebody. I
sick.
think we
Anyway,
should
that's how
bring
I
an
found
FT Signifier on our show, on this show.
out. That would be amazing. But that's also why that's what I found out about. And I didn't find out about Tulsa through FD Signifier, but I found out about it through YouTube people historians and people who were just like, oh, did you guys know that this thing
Yeah, and this
happened?
was really
And I was like, actually, I
2019,
did not.
2020, where it popped for people. You like in terms of knowledge.
There's a woman named Amber Ruffin
Oh yeah,
who
Amber.
has these really great
Mhm.
monologues
That's
that
my
she
girl.
posts on the internet all the time. And I learned about the city that was basically drowned. Like they just literally leveled a black town and then just turned it into a lake and then just acted like it never happened. And that is
That
terrifying.
is the pattern
Truly
of
terrifying.
behavior in the United States when it comes to taking the matter into their own hands and punishing communities of color, black communities in the early 1900s. You know, harming them, and all we have to do is just act like we didn't do it and erase the evidence of it. And oftentimes, especially, a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times, like organized white supremacy groups like the KKK were involved. And we know that the KKK was made up of everyday citizens and civilians, military members, police officers, law enforcement, politicians, and at varying levels, um, all different levels of people. You would have to go to during the day to help you out of certain situations if you needed to file for a certain thing or get some assistance or call for help from the police. These are the same people that were going at night, putting on them sheets and burning stuff down. And so that made it really easy.
Exactly. You ever heard the expression? You ever heard the expression? Why don't the cops ever like? They say, why don't the cops ever break up KKK rallies? I'm like, bitch,
Exactly.
they are at the. And anyway, so Amber Ruffin brought to my knowledge that basically destroying black neighborhoods and towns and then turning them into lakes is a relatively common practice. It happened in Seneca Village in New York City. It happened in Oscarville, Georgia, Vanport, Oregon, Susanna, Alabama. Like it's not it is happens so many times that it's like, my goodness, this is a pattern I've noticed. And I do think it is often an attempt to keep black people out of the capitalism game, which and as a second note, I would like to say, totally aside, that keeping black people out of the game of capitalism is a tactic. But also, here's another hot take: is that capitalism itself won't save us anyway. You know what I mean?
Oh
That's a whole
no!
nother conversation.
I mean, FD Signifier did a piece about capitalism, which was really black capitalism, which is really, it's not black queer capitalism, but it's black folks and capitalism, which is really, really interesting. And he talked about Jay-Z and Beyonce.
Oh, the face of black conservatives.
Yeah,
Was it that
it was
one?
the face of black
You talking
conservatives.
about
Yeah,
another one too?
and in that he talks heavily about capitalism, right? And
Yeah.
Jay-Z and his relationship to capitalism, which we've heard of from a lot of rich black folks, to be honest with you, is that like essentially now that they have that money, they ain't worried about nobody else. Like that's, I'm really paraphrasing and boiling it down a lot, but like the notion that they don't see.
Yeah. But that's the crux of it.
That they suddenly they don't either see or have a problem with the systemic oppression that keeps black folks from being able to access wealth and equity, financial wealth in this country at the same rate that other folks have access to it. And
Pep,
yeah,
we should get together and watch some F the Signifier together.
I
I
would
didn't
do it,
realize that you
girl.
what we did because I've been trying to find someone to watch it. I love
I
his
love
videos. They're
FD. I mean,
so
there's a whole
smart.
there's a bunch of YouTubers that we can talk about. But we're out of
I like
time.
Counter Points and Super High Five Wolf and yeah, we are out of time. You're right. Because I was about to start giving you other
Uh,
people that I love. Anyway, we are out of time. Pep, again, thank you so much for spending the time with me.
yeah, of
You know,
course. Well, thank you
I
for
think about
spending the
you
time
so
with
often.
me. This is our baby,
This is our baby. And I want you all to know that we want to thank our executive producer, Tracy Marquez, our senior producer, Charlene Westbrook, our producer, Corey Nixon, and producer, Amelia Rittaler. And our music is by Lift and Bear. Thank you all so much. We'll see you in about 2 weeks.